Hello and welcome to this short video talking about the University of Reading's BA programme, Languages and International Relations. My name's Dr. Sophie Heywood and I'm Associate Professor in French and the Admissions Tutor for the Department of Languages and Cultures. And today I'm joined by a colleague from International Relations. Joseph, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, my name is Dr. Joseph O'Mahony, and I'm Associate Professor of International Relations and the Admissions Tutor for the Politics and International Relations Department.
Thank you. Okay, in today's video, what we're going to do is really seek to tell you all about the programme, what we do, what it's like, but above all, answer the big question, which is why study international relations with a language? So for me, and I'm going to bring Joseph in and see if he agrees, but I think there is such an obvious logic to, if you're doing an international relations degree, to bring in to study a language alongside that, and maybe work, study in that country and learn, or the regions where that language is spoken, and learn, develop a real specialism in another country, another language region. But it is also, it's a degree programme that can work together really, really nicely. So you'll learn more about the kind of modules that you can do in politics over in the International Relations Department. The languages, the culture modules and the way we teach language here at Reading really work together nicely, allowing you to build pathways through your degree that allow you to study, either develop further your passion for international relations or build in complementary skills such as analysing film, literature, cinema and so forth, all in a target language. Joseph, am I missing anything in that first point there, or anything you'd like to add?
Well, so I think what you said makes a lot of sense, but I think there's a couple of things which, from the international relations perspective, where studying a language in addition to IR really adds a crucial element. So in the International Relations Department, we study international relations, and that is a very broad approach. We deal with theory, we deal with some history, we deal with what's going on at the moment to help you understand what's going on. But one thing that we don't do is we don't help students to get really into the mindset of a different culture. And that is something that's an extremely valuable skill if you're going to do international relations. So studying a language with international relations is one of the best combinations, I think, that you can do. So as I know from the languages, from talking to Sophie here, in the languages department, you don't just study language, you also study the culture, the literature, the art, you really get an insight into how people in a different country, a different culture, how they think. And that can really help with understanding other countries' foreign policy. From my perspective, their foreign policy is important, but that also can give you an insight into international relations more generally, that other people who are not studying a language, who are not able to access materials or culture in another language, they don't have that. And so that, I think, is something really unique about combining the study of language with international relations. It's also true that in addition to this mindset skill, accessing this mindset as a skill that you can get, you'll also just learn a lot more about another country, right? So international relations, we do cover some, we do have some modules which cover other countries, but if you're studying this joint languages with IR, then you're going to get a lot more exposure to a particular country. You really will become an expert in a region or a country, especially if you're going to go and travel there and do work and study abroad, which is the next point on this slide we've got right here.
That's right. Thank you. And it's lovely to hear that. And I think, and I would also just add that I think students of IR, because they're learning about the way, international relations work and diplomacy, they have lots of really interesting perspectives to bring to our history and politics and culture modules as well. So I think they can really kind of cross-fertilize across the different subjects they're studying. But yes, let's bring it to the next point, which is that there are some real exciting opportunities to work and study abroad as part of this degree. So you can do work placements, or go and study politics and international relations through our partner universities. So really developing some interesting specialisms there. And broadly, you develop that sense of, through studying another country or another region, language region, and living abroad and so forth, you really develop what we call intercultural awareness, a sense of there are different ways of seeing the world, different ways of understanding the world. That is, again, gives you the a huge, sort of a really important set of skills for the jobs market. It's very much valued by employers, and I think can really give you the edge in a range of careers where international relations is relevant and important. Shall we move on to the next slide? I think we should. Let's now talk in more detail. So to introduce the way we'd structure this degree programme at Reading, it is a full-year degree here. That's because we include a year abroad. We think that's very important. And the degree is split evenly, so it's half and half. You spend half of your time with Joseph with the IR department, and then half of your degree with us in the languages department. You may not be aware, but here at Reading we offer languages from beginners, so you don't have to have studied a language at all, or intermediate, so if you manage to do a GCSE in a language and you'd like to pick it up again, or advanced, so the post-A level. And you can choose to combine international relations with either French, German, Spanish, or Italian. The University of Reading is a research-intensive university, and that's really important. This shapes the whole personality of the degree, because you're working with the modules that you'll be able to choose. The teaching that you'll receive is really shaped by the fact that we are researchers, and you'll be learning with experts in the field. So Joseph, could you chat to us a little bit about what kind of research goes on in your department, please?
Sure. So in addition to very comprehensive introductions to international relations and politics around the world, we have some modules that seem quite specific on specific topics. And the reason why we have those specific topics is because we have people who are experts in those topics doing research in our department. And I've got a couple of examples here. We've got more a list of more modules in a second, but I wanted to highlight some examples. We have a couple of researchers actually, who work in gender and politics. These are extremely popular modules and very important, relevant topics. We have someone who works with electoral data, who works with different political parties in the UK and around Europe on the issue of gender and politics. And so that is, like I say, a very popular module. I do some research into nuclear weapons, both in history and also non-proliferation. And I teach a class, got to teach a class this afternoon actually, in the politics of nuclear weapons. That unfortunately perhaps is more relevant today than it has been because of developments in the Ukraine. We also have several people in the department who are experts in the United Nations and international organizations. We have a research center here dealing with United Nations. We have people who work with the United Nations. They go to interview people there. They go to see what the United Nations is doing, why it changes, why it does all this sort of stuff. And they teach a module on the United Nations. We also have someone who is the go-to person on proxy wars. Again, unfortunately, more relevant today than it maybe has been previously. And proxy wars are an extremely important category of civil wars. And so Dr. Rauter teaches a class on the dynamics of civil wars, which is very interesting, deals with lots of very important current events, but also civil wars from history and how they work. And so those are 4 examples of classes that are informed by people who are doing cutting-edge, world-leading research in that field. Sophie?
Thank you. And actually listening to you, I'm often struck when we chat about the research that goes on in your department, how there are some really interesting connections between what we're doing here in the languages department. So, for example, in the same way, really, we are very committed to carrying out research that has real impact beyond the university and engages with the important questions that we are asking ourselves at the moment. So, for example, we have our colleague Federico Felloppa. You can see the front cover is his beautiful red book there in the middle. He is an expert on migration. And particularly, he's a linguistics expert. He thinks a lot about hate speech and how it shapes the way we talk about people and understand difference and otherness in society. And he is working with the European Council, sorry, I always get those confused. He's working with the European Union and their task force thinking about hate speech. He's done work in Bosnia, for example, recently. And he runs modules on language and power, thinking about introduction to linguistics, getting you to think about the ways in which languages work and their uses and abuses. We also have quite a few colleagues who work in conflict studies, in war studies, thinking we have German specialists who think about how Germany after World War II reconstructed, reflected, came to terms with what had just happened and denazified. And we have specialists in World War I and also nationalism. And again, their modules, I think, are often quite popular with international relations students as well, because there's some lovely connections there. Quite a few of us work on literature and identity, thinking about the stories we tell about ourselves. There are lots of connections there to politics. I'm writing a book at the moment on publishing for children in the Cold War and censorship, for example. So when we think about literature, it is often in relation to the kind of the big movements of the time. We also look at translation, how ideas and books and texts cross borders, how they change in that process, and so forth. And again, these really shape, as you'll see in a second, the kind of modules that we offer. So without further ado, let's start to look a little bit at the modules. And we're going to kick off with Joseph talking about what they do in international relations.
So we have a list of modules in a second, but I wanted to highlight a couple of more innovative, experiential modules that we have in the department. So one example is a module on media and politics, very popular module, partly because media, the change in how politics is expressed through media has obviously changed a lot over the last 10 years with the rise of social media in particular. But not just that, you also have sort of podcasts and things like that, playing a very large role in people's political choices and identity. But so in this media and politics module, one of the other things, the things that's innovative about it is that as part of the module, as part of one of the assessment in the module includes students have to plan, carry out, and then broadcast a radio program actually on the radio as part of the module. And that has been, students find this very enlightening and enriching, and several students have used this as the springboard for a career in media, both in the radio but in other sorts of media. We also have a model United Nations module. We were the first department in the country to have a model United Nations module, which involves lots of experience in diplomatic negotiation, simulating what it's like to be at the UN and all the joys and frustrations that people experience as part of that. We also have a parliamentary studies module where one of the features of the module is that students will go to a parliament to see what it's like as part of that module. These are just some of the interesting and exciting things that happen in the modules in our department. Do we want to have a look at the rest of? Yeah, so in addition to those slightly more innovative ones, we also strive for innovation in all of our other modules. I've got a list here of some of the ones we're teaching this year. Karl Marx, if you want that. That's not as popular as some of the other modules, but the people who take it, they like that a lot. Perhaps the most popular module is international terrorism. We get lots of people taking that, obviously a very important topic. Different international relations topics like Middle East politics, international political economy, global politics and history, Russia and the world, obviously a very relevant and topical module. History of war and peace, British foreign policy, feminism, very popular, gender and politics, I mentioned already. These are all, students find these all extremely interesting, and we plan. Like I say, we're offering these this year. We plan to offer these again, but sometimes we get modules coming in and out, so they might change it a little bit. But this is what we're offering at the moment.
Lovely, thank you. So now I'm just going to chat briefly with you through what our students do on the other side in languages. So languages, we break up. Languages teaching is into two components. I'll talk about the language module in a second, but that's complemented and deepened by what we call culture modules. And that's where, as we said right at the beginning, you study not just the language, but also the culture, the history, the literature, the cinema, art, in the regions, countries, societies where the language is spoken. And so you can see the language at work, but also, develop a real specialist knowledge of other cultures. And I'm hoping that as students interested in international relations, you'll see how actually the language culture modules can complement and build on, add new perspectives to the IR modules as well. So we have, across all of our different languages, we have a lot of specialists interested in history, nations and globalization. So I mentioned World War I already. We have some exciting Hispanicists looking at culture and revolution and identity and independence movements in Latin America. We also have a fantastic module on Italy from 1968 to the present, thinking about the mafia, huge political change, all sorts of interesting things going on there. We also, as I mentioned, have a strong theme on thinking about literature, identities, how books get made and distributed, and who reads them in publishing as well. We have people working on the Colombian conflicts, writing and publishing in Spain during the Franco era and afterwards. French life stories across the globe. What does it mean to be French? Who writes in French? How does their identity, is it constructed through literature? And then I do stuff on children's books. And last but not least, I talked about Federico's research. He's joined by quite a few linguistics experts. So we offer quite a few modules thinking about how languages work, the history of their development, and how text and language don't just represent reality, they create reality. They create a sense of identity, sense of belonging, and where language is part of that. Then we have language modules. So for the language that you're studying, you will each year do a core language module. And this is where you learn much more about the mechanics of the language. So writing, reading, speaking, listening, translation. They're taught in the language, you immerse yourself, but we also place a real emphasis on using contemporary, authentic materials, discussing issues, be they political, cultural, social, in the regions where those languages are spoken. So again, lots of ways in which I think being an IR student is really going to kind of sort of enrich the way you study the language. Finally, I just wanted to highlight It is possible within your kind of selection of modules in the language department to pick up an additional language from beginners. And that could include Arabic, British Sign Language, Chinese, Mandarin, Japanese, modern Greek, and Russian. And you can, in that way, it is subject to approval, but you can, in that way, I think, build up a really nice profile if you're interested in, say, doing French, Arabic, and international relations, for example. That could really open up all sorts of interesting perspectives for you. Now I'd like to briefly talk to you about the year abroad and what kind of opportunities there are for IR and languages students. So depending on, no, you can either study in a university, and that's a popular one with students, and study international relations modules in one of our partner universities. Learn how international relations is taught in Cuba, for example. Is it different? What, you know, I said doing this kind of, we've emphasized, I think, you know, this kind of degree really opens up your perspectives. And there, you know, studying your subject in another country, in another higher education system, can really offer you new ways of thinking about the subject that you're passionate about. Or, of course, you can do a work placement, gain professional experience and gain international experience, both really, really important. Or you can work in a school, gain knowledge of another education system. Again, really important and interesting, and a great way to kind of gain practical skills. Here, very briefly, just want to kind of highlight our university partners, places where you can go and study for your year abroad. And there's all sorts of lovely, lovely places to go and study there. But particularly, I would underscore, it's not just the countries close by in Europe. We also have partnerships with La Réunion in the Indian Ocean, or in Spanish, I already mentioned that we have a partnership with a university in Havana in Cuba, and also Puebla in Mexico, as well as lots of Spanish universities, Italian universities, German and Austrian universities. Last but not least, the work placements. We offer our students a lot of support thinking about how to prepare for this and apply for jobs. And also we have a database of previous placements where employers are normally quite favourable to receiving another Reading University student. And you can see here again, hopefully for an IR student, there's all sorts of placements that our students have done that could be highly relevant. So working for the European Parliament, Knight Frank, the BMW Group, Deutsche Bank, advertising, Oxford University Press, all sorts of things that would be really interesting for an IR student. Before we move on to careers, I thought it'd be quite interesting to hear from Joseph. What is the IR perspective on study abroad? What are your thoughts?
Well, so I think study abroad is absolutely fantastic. I've done study abroad in all sorts of different ways, and it's been very useful to me. But from an IR perspective more generally, if students want to go into some sort of career that will be IR relevant international relations, and having international experience is absolutely crucial. Whether that's studying abroad or working in a placement, you're going to make contacts with people. You're going to learn how to interact with people from that country. You're going to have experiences, right? A range of experiences which you can then use when you're talking to employers, whether that's in another country or back here in the UK. You know, for example, if employers are like, have you ever encountered a problem? You can tell them some of the problems that you had in your study abroad year. But that having international experience is often very valuable or interesting to employers of all sorts as well. And so I think that having either study abroad or work abroad experience for students of IR is extremely valuable in that way.
Thanks, and I think that brings us nicely to just ending on thinking about careers and what kind of stuff IR and languages graduates have gone on to do. You know, as Joseph's just set out, really, there's all sorts of great stories that graduates from this kind of degree can tell employers and can tell on their CVs. And there's all sorts of sectors that are open to you, and where the skills and experience that you've gained on this degree are really highly prized and hopefully give you the edge, I think, in an interview, job application situation. So there's all kinds of things like civil service, diplomacy, international organizations, finance, banking, multinational companies, international charities, as well as things like the media, journalism, advertising, teachings, all kinds of areas where our grads are valued. And we're just now going to talk you through a couple of stories to give you a sense of the kind of things that our grads have gone on to do. So I thought I would start with Gina Tour, who is her job has been highly relevant in the pandemic. She works in the civil service. She did a BA in Italian and international relations and went on to work in the civil service. She's currently the senior briefing advisor for the UK Health Security Agency, and she worked a lot during the pandemic on communications, communicating government policy, public health policy. So she spoke of how actually doing her Italian degree has really helped her in creating concise and clear messaging for complex policy. You know, those sort of language skills, that really clear understanding of communication has been so important for her. Then we have lots of students graduate and go on to work in abroad and work for large international companies. Alice Hero is a good example of that. She did a BA in Italian and politics, and specialised in gaming, and worked for the big consultation agency KPMG, thinking about gender and the gaming industry, and she's currently head of studio compliance at Evolution Gaming. And now, Joseph, perhaps you could talk to us about a couple of IR grads.
So yeah, lots of students from our politics program and international relations students go into the media, and one really good example is Holly Gibbs, who after graduating from here went to work for Sky News. She did some work on the politics debate show The Pledge, but then went on to do other roles in Sky News. So that's a really good example. We also have lots of students who go to work for government. For example, the civil service fast stream, or the civil service in all sorts of different ways, but Fiona Patterson is a really good example of someone who went to work for the civil service, and she was, you know, rising up. It's called the fast stream for a reason, in the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport. So that's just another example of our students.
Lovely. I think it's a lovely place to end there, actually. So if you have any questions, here are our details. Do drop us a line, send us an email. We're very happy to chat further, or follow what we get up to on Twitter. Have a bit of a sense of the activities within our departments and our research. So I will close this by saying thank you so much to Joseph for joining me today. It's been really fun, and good luck with all your studies and your choices, and hopefully see some of you at Reading soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.